Hey everyone, let's jump into a fascinating story that's been the subject of intense debates and heartfelt reflections over the years. Today, we're diving into the events that took place in Waco, Texas, a tale filled with mystery, tragedy, and a whole lot of controversy. Set amidst the high plains of Texas, Waco became the center stage of an event that combined wild claims of prophecy, deep-seated beliefs, and a standoff that left an indelible mark on American history. In our journey today, we'll explore how a humble beginning transformed into a narrative that still captures imaginations. We'll talk about a compound known as Mount Carmel, where a group of devoted followers gathered under the guidance of one man who later called himself David Koresh. His story is compelling, layered with elements of personal struggle, a dramatic rise to power, and mysticism that many found both alluring and alarming. We're going to unpack how internal beliefs and external pressures collided in one of the most talked-about sieges of the late 20th century. So, buckle up as we explore the Waco saga, a story where faith and fear danced dangerously close together, leaving lessons that still resonate with us today. Stay tuned. Waco, Texas is a small city with a big story. Despite its modest size, it has experienced events that have captured national attention and stirred heated debates. Historically, Waco was a quiet, tight-knit community where traditional values and local customs played a significant role in everyday life. However, in the decades leading up to the early 1990s, a mix of political tensions, cultural shifts, and emerging concerns about fringe groups began to change how people saw this town. Local law enforcement had started noticing unusual activities on the outskirts of the city, where isolated compounds and groups with unconventional beliefs began to emerge. Rumors of extraordinary lifestyles and claims of prophetic visions were whispered in small-town circles, raising eyebrows and sparking curiosity. As the national spotlight began to shine on these stories, federal agencies became increasingly involved, anxious about the potential for radical movements to disrupt public safety. It was against this backdrop of growing suspicion and heightened interest that a particular compound became infamous. Far from being just another rural community, Waco's serene image was overshadowed by the appearance of an apocalyptic group with a dramatic interpretation of religious texts. In this context, not only explains what happened in Waco, it also highlights the deep conflicts between personal conviction and governmental control that resonate incredibly well today profoundly. David Koresh, originally known as Vernon Wayne Howell, had a life that read like a dramatic novel from the start. Born into a troubled environment, he faced abandonment and hardship, growing up without a steady father's guidance and under the care of a young mother who herself struggled through poverty. Life wasn't easy for young Vernon, who found little support in a community that often overlooked his needs. As a teenager, he encountered a series of challenges, including bullying and feelings of isolation, which deeply affected his self-confidence. Amid all these struggles, one thing became a beacon for him: the Bible. Rather than seeing it merely as an ancient text, he began to devour its stories, seeking understanding and comfort during his tough times. This fascination soon turned into an obsession, and what he found on those pages drastically reshaped his worldview. Vernon's ability to connect biblical tales to his personal experiences gave him a newfound sense of purpose. Over time, as he delved deeper into Scripture, he started to develop a belief that he was destined for something extraordinary. His charismatic nature and fervent passion for the Bible caught the attention of members of a small offshoot group called the Branch Davidians. With every verse he recited and every prophecy he interpreted, Vernon slowly transformed into someone new. He adopted the name David Koresh, symbolizing his aspirations to merge the legacy of King David with a modern-day prophetic mission. This rebranding was a turning point, not just in his identity, but also in the destiny of the community he was about to lead. His journey from a struggling, bullied teenager to a leader who claimed divine insight is a central piece of the larger Waco story, setting the stage for the fervor and conflict that would later unfold. It all escalated. Emerging out of a splinter of a broader religious movement, the Branch Davidians quickly forged their own unique identity. This group had roots in Seventh-day Adventism, yet they embraced a distinct belief in imminent divine intervention. They believed that the end of days was near and that a new covenant was forming, setting them apart from mainstream society. The community gathered at Mount Carmel, where every brick was considered part of a sacred mission. Among their core beliefs was the idea that a chosen leader could unlock hidden truths in religious texts. It wasn't long before Vernon Wayne Howell, later David Koresh, stepped forward as that figure. With his articulate recitations of scripture and passionate takes on prophetic visions, he reshaped the movement. Under Koresh's guidance, the group adopted new rituals, reimagined traditional family structures, and prepared for an apocalyptic showdown. He reinterpreted biblical passages to justify radical practices, pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable in both religious and social circles. For his followers, these teachings weren't just abstract ideas. They served as a roadmap for salvation in an unpredictable world. Their days revolved around scripture, prophecy, and the anticipation of a final battle between good and evil. Leading up to the fateful siege, tensions were mounting on both sides. Investigations into the compound had already begun, as local law enforcement and federal agencies grew increasingly alarmed by reports of unusual weapon stockpiles and practices within the compound. Former members came forward with disturbing accounts of what life was like inside Mount Carmel. Stories of intense discipline, strange rituals, and alleged abuses added fuel to the growing fire of suspicion. As officials dug deeper, they uncovered hints of a broader network of radical beliefs that seemed ready to erupt into violence at any moment. Meanwhile, the Branch Davidians were not isolated. They were part of a changing landscape where the line between personal faith and extremist ideologies was becoming dangerously blurred. Government agencies, notably the ATF and FBI, began to exchange information and form strategies based on mounting intelligence and hard evidence of potential weapons violations. This wasn't just about small-town concerns. It was about a national issue that threatened the stability of communities far and wide. The decision to intervene didn't happen overnight. Behind closed doors, carefully planned operations were discussed by officials trying to balance public safety with respect for religious freedom. The compound's reputation as a hotbed of apocalyptic prophecy only intensified these concerns. As days turned to weeks, surveillance efforts became more aggressive. Helicopters and remote cameras were deployed, and every unusual movement was meticulously recorded. The growing body of evidence steadily convinced authorities that the situation might spiral out of control. In this charged atmosphere of mutual distrust and uncertainty, the stage was set for a confrontation that would soon capture the attention of the entire nation. Every stakeholder, from concerned citizens to government officials, felt the weight of what might become a major turning point in American history. Tensions continued to rapidly escalate. On February 28, 1993, the situation reached a tipping point with the launch of Operation Showtime. A group of over 70 ATF agents moved in to serve a search and arrest warrant on the Branch compound. Tensions were high as everyone braced for what might unfold. The plan was simple on paper: enter the compound, secure any illegal weapons, and apprehend David Koresh, the man at the center of it all. However, as the agents approached the compound, something unexpected happened. Gunfire erupted almost instantly. Both the government and the Branch Davidians claimed that the other side fired first, sparking chaos on all fronts. In the ensuing minutes, the air filled with the sound of commotion and gunshots. 4 agents lost their lives, and 6 Branch Davidians were killed in the initial exchange, setting off alarms that reverberated far beyond Waco. The raid turned into a high-stakes standoff, where every move counted. Agents quickly realized they were dealing with a situation that was far more volatile than anticipated. Panic mixed with determination as strategies were revised on the fly. That day, Operation Showtime marked the beginning of a confrontation that would soon escalate into one of the most infamous sieges in American history. After the initial raid, control of the situation passed to the FBI, and the stage was set for a prolonged siege that would last for weeks. Commandos and negotiators worked around the clock as the compound was encircled, and every exit was closely watched. The FBI turned to psychological tactics, employing a range of methods designed to pressure the Branch Davidians into surrendering. Loudspeakers blared messages, and lights were used to disrupt the nightly routines inside the compound. Agents repeatedly called out, urging them to come forward peacefully, but the response was a steady stream of cryptic biblical passages and cautious delays from Koresh. In the compound, life became a struggle for the safety and well-being of its inhabitants. With limited food, water, and medicine, tension ran high among the followers who clung to their beliefs even as fear set in. Days merged into nights as everyone inside waited, hoping for a resolution that never came. The world outside looked on in a mix of horror and curiosity as every new development was broadcast over the media. The broadcasters captured moments of both desperate negotiation and an eerie calm inside Mount Carmel. For some, the siege was a tragic test of faith. For others, it was a dramatic showdown between two very different worlds. As psychological warfare intensified over the 51-day standoff, with tear gas and relentless sound campaigns, the human element of the story became painfully clear. Every call, every shout, every whispered prayer was part of a complex dance between authority and belief. The entire situation was a high-wire act, where one wrong move could tip the balance toward massacre. Through it all, the FBI maintained its aim to preserve life while also resolving the standoff without letting the situation further spiral out of control. Hope endured inside. April 19, 1993, marked the climax of the standoff with a tragic and fiery conclusion. As dawn broke, the FBI pushed tanks forward and began injecting tear gas into the compound, hoping that the escalating pressure would force the occupants to evacuate. Hours passed, and the silence was broken by the sound of flames taking hold. Smoke began curling from the walls of Mount Carmel, signaling that the situation had irreversibly escalated. Inside, chaos mingled with a strange calm, as some believed that David Koresh had orchestrated the events, urging his followers toward a final, symbolic act of defiance. Others suggested that the gas and the stress of the siege had triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. What followed was a rapidly spreading inferno that engulfed the compound entirely. The fire consumed wood, drywall, and every material it could reach. Over 76 people tragically lost their lives in the blaze, including 25 innocent children whose voices were silenced forever. In the aftermath, the scene left a nation grappling with shock and sorrow, unable to comprehend how fervent beliefs and bitter confrontations had culminated in such devastation. The mysterious circumstances of who exactly ordered the fire fuel ongoing debates. Some survivors claimed that Koresh had given a final command to burn the place, while others insisted it was an accident born of desperation. Regardless of the origin, this final confrontation sealed the fate of Mount Carmel, marking an indelible moment in American history and embedding the tragedy deeply into the national memory. In the wake of the siege, the nation was left in deep shock and confusion. The tragic events at Mount Carmel sparked intense debates across the country about government overreach and the limits of religious freedom. Media outlets dissected every detail of the incident, with pundits and citizens alike questioning the decisions made by both law enforcement and the Branch Davidians. Congressional investigations were launched, and multiple reports were drafted, each attempting to explain the myriad of events that led to the disastrous outcome. Families of the victims mourned profound losses, and communities struggled to come to terms with what had transpired. The controversy was not limited to the political sphere. It seeped into popular culture, becoming a reference point for discussions on the balance between state power and individual belief. The Waco siege quickly transformed into a symbol, emblematic of the deep divisions that can arise when fear, ideology, and authority intersect. Whether seen as an example of governmental tyranny or a tragic result of radical leadership, the legacy of that day remains divisive. In the years that followed, lessons from Waco were examined in forums, documentaries, and scholarly debates, each offering insights and warnings for the future. The emotional and political aftershocks are still felt today, reminding us of how deeply a single event can scar a nation. Public debates continue to spark passionate discussions, and every anniversary of the siege rekindles memories, urging policymakers and citizens alike to learn from that painful chapter in history. Justice must prevail. As we wrap up the Waco story, one thing is clear: the events left a legacy that still sparks deep conversations today. David Koresh's rise and the fall of Mount Carmel remind us of how belief and power can dangerously intertwine. When leaders control faith, the line between inspiration and manipulation blurs. The Waco saga shows how a community's deep-rooted beliefs, mixed with external pressures, can lead to explosive outcomes. It teaches us that no matter how noble a cause seems, unchecked authority and extreme ideologies can end in heartbreak. Even decades later, people reference Waco in debates over government overreach, civil liberties, and the influence of radical ideas. The lessons are simple. Open dialogue, clear transparency, and accountability must guide us when facing powerful forces. While the scars of that day may never fully heal, the conversation it sparked serves as a reminder to question authority and cherish empathy. Ultimately, the legacy of Waco is not just about a siege or a radical vision. It is a cautionary tale of how fear and fanaticism can shape history, urging us all to build a future based on reason and compassion. Always remember, unity and thoughtful action pave the way forward for